Well, thank you very much for staying with us. It is that time of the morning where I share with you my blunt thoughts. And this morning I've titled it simply, Ghana in Focus, the Challenges of Today and Tomorrow. Ghana in Focus, the Challenges of Today and Tomorrow. As we approach election 2024, well, the Americans will get there faster than we do, but that is for them. We must think of ourselves. What is happening today? And what should we be contemplating, not just for the elections, but for the future, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to the backbones of the economy, industry, service, agriculture, and others. When it comes to you and me and our well-being, what are some of the things we ought to be contemplating? And the thoughts I'm about to share with you are not skewed necessarily towards political parties, no. Because in the end, we determine who gets to rule in this country, who gets to become a member of parliament, who gets to become president. And maybe we have to seize the opportunity moving forward to push our leaders to let go of some of the things that they enjoy, including appointments, so that we can have more of a say, like in other jurisdictions, in terms of who leads the community in this or that enterprise. We can leave the MPs and the presidency and all of that to them. I still feel the 2010 Constitutional Review Commission and some of its postulations, some of what it proffers, ought to be taken a second look at so that we can progress as a country. Because if we keep going down the same road we've gone, it's like Henry Ford says, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting the same results you've always got. So we must change at some point. The question is, are we ready for that change? And the change I'm talking of is not necessarily a change in party. It's not necessarily that. It's a change in mindset. It's a change in our thinking. If I start talking about corruption, it's a change in our thinking, corruption. Because the very people who lead are from us. How do they learn those mentalities? It's just mind-boggling where we are. I hear recently some people from a different country in Europe came to Ghana and they were shocked that we didn't have railways in Ghana, looking at the fact that we're in the 21st century and everything in between. We don't. And yet we have indeed what the president said back then. That's the question. But come with me, because some of the malaises, some of the sickness, not just of the mind, but of action that we face, has brought us to these latest reports from the Afrobarometer. I'll talk about corruption. I'll talk about NITA, the National Information Technology Agency. And then I'll also talk about ECG. My power has been going off. It's a bit erratic. But what are the challenges in there? So let's start with corruption. If you look at the latest Afrobarometer survey, you see there's a trend, and we have to pay attention to the trend because it has become problematic. If we don't stop somewhere, then what are we aiming at going into the future, right? If this were your top, whatever, a league log, imagine the Ghana Premier League from top. You would expect the highest performers, right? But here it is the highest performance and ignominy. The Ghana Police Service, hey, Abai, no magic. But anyway, some of them are also very good. I have good friends in the Ghana Police Service. Some of them talk to me from time to time. But if you look at the narrative out there and the perception, it's worrying. You have the police, 63% of surveyed persons saying they are corrupt. Of course, there are two dimensions that the Afrobarometer looked at, but we focus on just one, 63%. The office of the presidency, the fact that this is appearing here, it gives me chills. It gives me chills. And the fact that you have all three, major arms of government, the three of them, all in here in the top 5, tells you if we are not looking at it, if we are not keeping our eye on the ball, that there is something fundamentally wrong with our leadership in Ghana. How can you have the presidency at number 2, 54%? You have MPs at number 4 with 51%, and judges and magistrates, the judiciary, at number 5 with 44%. Where are we going? Where will they go? You have the Electoral Commission, 43%, tax officials, third, with 53%. If we don't sit up, you see, it's like when you're getting married, they say, if there's anyone who feels this marriage should not happen, speak up now or forever hold your peace. If we don't talk about these matters, then we might as well stay muzzled and keep quiet, whatever happens to this country. But from here, if you look at the previous years and where we've got to, it's only going to go downhill if something is not done. And that is why we ought to talk about this. Let's go to the next slide. Now, if you look at the trend in terms of the level of corruption, you see, usually when an administration takes off, there is some positivity. But every year, you know, I say, I poto, I chaka, I tete, I say, I pro. 83%. That not just perceived level, but concrete, you know, feelings, sentiments of corruption. In 2014, stay with me. By 2024, 10 years later, it stands at 74%. And don't be happy yet, because the next slide will reveal a certain trend. But if you look at this dip, this is where this steep decline, 83%, then the thinking in 2017, at the start of a new era, 36%. So it had fallen, meaning a positive, right? But it started rising steadily. 2019, 53%. You had added on almost 20 percentage points, about 17 percentage points. You go to 2022, 77%, and in 2024, 74%. You look at 83 and 77, a difference of 6%. Did we go or did we come? Next slide. Then you go to the next slide, and then you look at the fight against corruption. The blue line referencing those who feel the fight against corruption has been very bad. The red line, those who feel it has gone very well. If you look at the blue line, those who say it's very bad, there's an interesting picture. 2012 stood at 56%, rose in 2014 to 74%, then declined. You see the trend. 2017, new administration, 33%. And then they also started steadily rising. 2022, the highest you would see there, 85% saying we are performing very badly. Now it stands at 82%, just 3 percentage points shaved off. In terms of performing very well, you would see that, again, that trend, because it's the inverse. 44%, 26%, rose to 67%, and now it has fallen. Look at that figure, 2024. 16% feeling we are doing very well in the fight against corruption. So if you were giving advice, sometimes when you say these things, they'll say, oh, but you are saying this, where's your data? If you were giving advice as a consultant to any government on the basis of such a performance, what would you tell them? Are they winning the fight against corruption? Are we, as Ghanaians, winning the fight against corruption? I will not say the answer for you. You watching me, you know the answer. Let's go to the next slide. Then you look at trust in institutions, and it's shocking. With the president or the presidency in focus. The level of trust in 2012, remember this was an electoral year, stood at 56%. Then it fell to in 2014 to 41%. After 2016, another electoral year, in 2017, it rose. And that tells you as well about the angst when people talk about the fact that there was so much trust at the dawn of this administration in 2016, so that by 2017, January 7, when it actually took over, the sentiments were there. When that year, the polling went 73%. Look at the steady decline. Now it stands at even lower than in 2012. And even in 2014, it stands at 28%. Confidence level in the president, in the presidency, 2024. I'm not saying it. The Afrobarometer report says so. Next slide. Now, if you look at trust in institutions, the EC, why am I bringing in the EC? Of course, we're heading to elections. 59% in 2012. Mind you, this was an electoral year. 2014, 37%. 2017, you would see, again, that same effect. 54%, 53%, dwindled to 33% in 2022. Look at that. What happened in between 2019 to 2022? 20% drop. These are some of the things we talk about some of the actions and what? Reactions. And now It stands at a low of 28% in 2024. In fact, you know what's interesting? If you look at the trust in the presidency and you look at the trust in the EC in 2024, they both stand at 28%. Is there a story there? I don't know. Next slide. And then focusing on free and fair elections, again, as I get ready to conclude on the Afrobarometer and then move on to something else. If you look at the year 2017, those who said it was completely free and fair stood at 66%. If you look at 2024, 7 years later, it stands at 32%. That is a drop of 34%. It means more than half of that trust has been eroded. Food for thought. Keep quiet. Don't talk. Whether you're NDC or MPP, it doesn't matter. Whether you support some other party, just reflect. Think about this. Think about it. That's where we are. We're on the precipice. So if you see the United States and its embassy here saying some things about if you stoke certain actions or you do anything pertaining to rigging and the rest, you must understand. I feel that it is a bit of an affront to us as a country in terms of sovereignty. If we were more powerful, I mean, how many times do you see the US do that in other countries? It's because we are where we are. But at the same time, you can't fault them. It's the right thing to do because they're also trying to safeguard the beacon of democracy, if not in Africa, in the sub-region. But how did we get here? That's what we ought to be asking ourselves. Let's move on to the next slide. And in terms of that report, what will influence voters' choices, maybe yours might be in here. Candidates' honesty, 90%. Candidates' character, 88. Campaign promises, 59. Candidates' running mate, 45. Money or gifts or favors. I found this interesting. 30%, 30. Money, gifts, favors will influence them. Hey! You want to be like Esau. You sell your birthright for a pot of bean stew. Well, you can do it. But if they catch you, don't come and complain because you know the giver, the receiver, is so more. Candidates' ethnicity. That's another worry for me. We are still voting on ethnic lines. 30% saying that I'll vote based on the ethnicity of the candidate. We have a lot of work to do in this country, and that is why we must get proper education. The more enlightened people are, the less some of these factors come in, honestly. But let's quickly proceed from here. Let's go past the Afrobarometer and come here. I was mentioning only yesterday about those drones when the Ghana Chamber of Mines was here, right? And then we also had, in fact, it was the National Commission on Small Arms and Light Weapons. They were talking about needing about 100 drones to man a huge swathe of territory so that they can monitor arms and movement and smuggling. A few years ago, we spent $3 million claiming we're bringing in 200 drones to combat Galamsey. Today, we claim we are still fighting Galamsey. Where are the drones? We showed 3 of them. Where are the 200, the 197? Similar situation here with NITA, the National Information Technology Agency. Recently, it came to the floor of Parliament. What's the issue? During the COVID period, we claimed to have expended $17 million, and we did expend it. $17 million paid for the construction of 300 workstations to avoid the spread of the COVID-19 virus during the pandemic. So you create that workstation and all of that. Do you know the interesting thing? Somehow, we can't find the workstations. Yeah, we can't find them. So where are they? NITA has been called upon to come to the floor of Parliament. And I'm not saying or suggesting anything. I'm only saying, NITA, if you have the facts, if you have the workstations, bring them because we need to use them. We may need them for other things. They can be retooled. And we have to account for the money, right? So where are the workstations? In this country, there are so many phantom projects. Projects we expend money on, your money, my money, that can't be found. So there you have it. $17 million. Multiply that if you like, because in some places the dollar is exchanging for 17, right? So multiply 17 by 17. Okromuha. Next slide. And if you look at the basis for the contempt charges against NITA, it has to do with its failure to provide documentation justifying the $17 million contract and no evidence being adduced to support the claim of providing the workstations. So, provide documentation, you will not provide. Provide anything to support the workstations having actually been worked on or constructed. So in a situation like this, what would you say? I don't know. Like I said, I bring out the facts, you make the deductions. That's up to you. Let's go to the next slide. I just want to proceed to talk about ECG quickly. You know what a cash waterfall mechanism is? When we started this a few years ago, it was to ensure that the regulators, stakeholders within the electricity supply chain would get fair value for the work they were delivering. Fairness in terms of the distribution of revenue and transparency as well. That's the bottom line of what the CWM, the cash waterfall mechanism, is about. But if you look at the latest, and I've been experiencing power outages, I don't know about you. If you look at the latest Sunon Asogli power plant shutdown, saga, the reasons: inability to fund its operations due to the failure of ECG to honor overdue payments, and the ECG's debt stands at 259 million not cedis, USD, dollars. So multiply this by 15, 16, 17, whichever way you want to do it. What figure would you get there? That's how much they are owed. And these are the challenges we face. Because in the end, you would notice that there's also talk about the fact that if we don't address some of these challenges, we're going to face further power outages. If we don't address some of these challenges, we're going to face further power outages. And if we do, you know what that means for all of us. If the power outages happen, we all suffer. So, these are the thoughts I have to share for you today based on these situations. And I'm talking about, as I go to my final slide, I'm talking about the fact that per the finance ministry's unpaid shortfalls in the CWM, the cash waterfall mechanism, you would notice that from August 2023 to July 2024, we are looking at 2.6 billion Ghana cedis from the finance ministry. There's been a lot of talk about the finance ministry's role in this and ECG's own role and collections and shortfalls and everything. But you see, in the end, all that talk about where you say, where you say, and all of that, it boils down to those figures. The $200+ million and this reflection in there. It affects you and me. We can't run away from it. So rather than pretend the problem isn't there, let's face the problem head on. And let's realize that it's not restricted to just our leaders. We ourselves, as followers, as citizens of this country, must help push so that we get to that dreamland. So I'll end the way I started. Ghana in Focus, the challenges of today and tomorrow. How are we planning to deal with the challenges today and tomorrow? In terms of the politics, in terms of ourselves as followers, and how we mean to change the rhetoric. What do you say? My name is Benjamin Akakpo. These are my blunt thoughts shared with you, raw, hot, unedited, undiluted. As always, I pray fervently, may God bless our motherland, Ghana, and make her great and strong.